welcome to Generation Movies on a Friday afternoon in November, pre-Thanksgiving weekend. My name is J.W. Colwell, joined as always by my co-host in crime and all in green, Rich Drees.
Yeah, I did. I literally had this idea at the last second, so I was just like throwing the lighting together, and I'm not quite sure it works. So
No, it does. You look like
there's nothing wrong with
you look like a man behind a curtain.
man who should be behind a curtain.
Well,
Face for radio and a voice for mime.
So it is a big weekend. It is going to be a big weekend at the box office.
Woo,
and you know what? So movie theater has been working hard and having a bunch of movies that didn't make a lot of money, some movies that made more than people were expecting to make. But now we're in the frame. The end frame of the year is where money can be made. Money can be had. Money can be great for movie theaters, and it all depends on what does it depend on, Rich? It depends on good movies.
Good movies, yes.
Yes, it depends on movies that people want to see. It depends on movies that get audiences buzzing to the point where they can't stay home and wait to stream it, right? And what do we have? We have Wicked, and we have Gladiator. So we also have our first post Barbenheimer double movie opening to varying degrees of markets on the same day. So it's the second time we're trying this phenomenon. Gladiator clearly squared at men and people of an age, a certain age that remember Sand and Sandals epics. Wicked is definitely theater kids and definitely people who love Broadway and like musicals and have a passion for the Wizard of Oz that is unhealthy.
And I and I dare say it's more family friendly of the two.
Certainly, although in this America, I'm not sure. Anyway, you would. I was thinking about it. Like I was thinking about the idea about Wicked. Let's start with Wicked because Wicked is. We were talking about it yesterday after I saw it. I told you my feelings are pretty clear. I think.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead. You go first.
No, I want to start by saying I think it could be one of the greatest Broadway to film adaptations Hollywood has ever produced. In the sense that the Broadway musical is great. It expands on Oz in an interesting way, but the movie, because they're not dealing with a stage, the movie can expand things out, extrapolate things out, bring things out, and it's a real interesting thing because there are a lot of movies that get translated either from Broadway or the stage to Broadway or whatever, but very few expand a Broadway experience into the theater. And this is one of those movies that I think does, and remarkably well. And we were coming up with like things on our hand last night. What Sound of Music? Because you had Julie Andrews walking up a hill in the hills being alive.
You can't set a stage adaptation of Sound of Music the way
the hills are alive.
Robert
the hills
Weiss
are alive.
Directs the opening of just shots of the Alps, and then you slowly move in, and there's Julie Andrews pirouetting around.
And
singing,
the one I had said was West Side Story. I think both versions of West Side Story I think they're incredible on stage, but I think when you put them on film, you can expand scenes out, you can move things around. New York is a vibrant live city on film that isn't necessarily as translated to the stage. So I think very few film musicals adapted from a Broadway musical can expand. And God does Wicked expand. It expands. It envelopes the audience. The audience, like every audience I've seen with thus far, is clapped at the end. Not that that's a judge, but like the set design, costume design, cinematography, staging of the musical numbers, everything that John Chu has done here, starting with the casting of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande is a fucking knockout, Rich. It's a jack out of the park.
Mhm. I
It's
don't have any problems with this movie. This is damn near perfect filmmaking for me. Some people say, "Oh, it takes a little bit while to get to the Emerald City and all that stuff," and I'm like, "Well, some of it's laying groundwork for part two, and
that's
ultimately,
that's another thing.
when you
That's
get to be
another
able to
thing.
sit down with both films, um, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Right now, you're like, oh well, what's the stuff with the the talking animals, and you're like, well, that does set up some stuff, and it does kind of reach into and play off of a lot of the political themes that are in the musical and the original source material of Maguire's
Yeah,
novel.
McGuire's novel. I think the
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing about that is and again I've seen it twice already. I've seen Gladiator once. I've seen Wicked twice. But what I would say is the interesting thing about Wicked is they do a great job with all the material in the first part, and they do a great job of making it like the end of part one is intermission.
Yeah,
I didn't come up
which
with that. My wife actually said this was perfect the way they ended it. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is they've given nothing away. All of the reveals that are in the musical, some of them I remember occurring in the first act, and then they occurred in the first act, and then they were expanded upon in the second act. But this movie doesn't give any of them away, except for some really clever lines, bits of dialogue, things that you may notice that if you're a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz, they're there, but it's not necessarily something where you go, unless you know what's coming if you've seen the Broadway musical. But
yeah,
I think the interest, like
there's plenty of foreshadowing
everything,
and
certainly.
yeah, I would say there's a number of Chekhov's guns that are set up on mantelpieces in the first movie that we will see picked up and
Well,
fired in the
and I
second.
know, and I think that's what's fascinating is the thing. Sometimes when you set up those Chekhov's guns, Rich, and we've seen movies like this, you set them up for something coming later, and you leave the palate and you leave the tummy empty, right? Like it's setting up all this food that's coming later, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
fill the stomach. But that's not the case here. Everything's full. The movie's big. It's great. The musical numbers are amazingly shot. Everything looks like $1,000,000. And if I'm Universal, I'm going to tell you this right now. If I'm Universal, I'm already planning where I'm going to add bits to theme parks. I
They would be insane not to be
They would
already
be
on
insane
that.
at this point. They'd be insane not to. I know we already have some stores down here in Orlando, but a couple other things I think we should hit upon. Um, this gal, Erivo is well, these two gals, they're amazing together. Erivo is clearly the star of the show, but I think Grande more than makes up for her, and it's not necessarily a carbon copy performance of Chenoweth, but it's like she took the best versions of Chenoweth's reactions and melded them
Mm-hmm.
into her own. So I'm really like there. The supporting cast is astounding. You got Jeff Goldblum, you got um, Oscar winner. You got Oscar winner. Can't think of. I'm going blank.
I'm still firing around with the lighting. I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
know you. I know you are. You're killing me.
Sorry.
That's okay. Oscar
Still
winner.
better.
Oh, I can't believe I'm going up on this. This is terrible. Terrible. And now I can't find it. Man, it's fine. Everything. It's
Mm.
so good. Like it's an amazing piece of cinema. Um, Michelle Yeoh, Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh is where I was going.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it.
Peter
Sorry.
Dinklage. Peter Dinklage is also involved. It's an astounding piece of cinema that demands to be seen on a big screen, the biggest you can find, the loudest theater you can find, and it is a return to Oz where it's not mechanical like Oz the Great and Powerful. not scary like Return to Oz. Just a very wholesome, amazing Return to Oz. Today, what I was really watching for, Rich, was the shooting of the musical sequences. Um, you know, the one sequence that's shot on rotating bookshelves.
That tubular bookshelf in the library at Shiz University blew my freaking mind.
It's so amazing.
Didn't mention it. I couldn't find a way to work it in my
no, but it's overall everything. The way it's shot in this dynamic, everything moving, fluid way. And it's also like the music bounces from one scene to the next, where even the music that's underlining other scenes, you can hear the music from other songs or bigger songs that are coming or songs that have already passed. And it's build on build on build on build on build. It deserves to make $1 billion. It might make $1 billion. And it just leaves you ready for the second one whenever they decide to release it. Because again, there are a lot of Chekhov's guns on nightstands and tables, waiting to be fired. I don't think there's any really in rewatching it again today. I don't see any. There's no flow issues. It moves pretty brisk for a 2 hour and 40-minute movie. You know, sometimes we get longer movies, Rich, and they don't move well. But this one is fluid, and I do understand the concept. Oh, we didn't get somewhere quick enough, but if you're cutting it into 2 parts, you have to find a way to make one part work. Because sometimes when they cut movies into 2 parts, Rich, you feel like the first part or the second part isn't worth your time. That they did all they needed to do in the first part, or the second part had too much waiting. Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they wanted to expand out the musical numbers, obviously, and they do a wonderful job. They also wanted to incorporate some of the material from the book that didn't make it into the Broadway show back in. And I think there's some good additions back in. Like, we don't, in the musical, we don't get that flashback to when Elphaba was like 10 years old or whatever. And she, but that illuminates so much about the dynamic between her sister, and how those two relate and are related to by their father. And I think that's really important to understand. It's a complex dynamic, and that scene just builds it out beautifully.
They make it a very central issue to the two of them, in that he's constantly protecting Nissa Rose and not, very kind of awful to Elphaba. And I again, the interesting thing is the layering in stuff that you might only get a brief glimpse of on stage. It's not easy to bring new stuff to the table, or shoot new scenes, or do things that might offend the Broadway audience. But I can't see a Broadway audience who loves Wicked coming out of this movie and going, I'm mad that they didn't do this. And
I don't see them coming out of it. I don't see them coming out of this going, oh no, I love this thing and they gave me too much of it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I said, it's a layer. It's a layer.
I saw this on Broadway way back when it first opened. I saw it in November of 2003. So it had been barely open for a month, although it had out of town tryouts and then preview period and such. But and
I believe many of the words were gonna be a disaster, gonna bomb on Broadway.
Catchy songs, but what the heck's up with this story? And 21 years later, it's still running strong. It's still selling out every performance. And what's crazy about that is, to me, is usually the producers of a Broadway show that they want to
Thanks, Joe.
That they want to bring into a adapt into a film, they wait until that show's run is over, and then they go and they make the movie. But this, and they're
9 times out of 10, it's disappointing, Rich. 9 times out of 10, it's a disappointing.
Here, they just know Universal, who owns the Broadway show, and produce the Broadway show is just like, we know this thing's going to keep making money for us hand over fist. And if anything, the movie will probably drive people to want to go see it live as well. So, you know, the fact that we got this movie is kind of an outlier, but it's so damn good. And we're so lucky that we get it at this point.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, so a Broadway play is an amazing thing. A Broadway musical is an amazing thing. And people get to see Broadway musicals and get to experience them wherever they do. It's always an amazing thing, right? Live stage productions are incredible. But movies have to transcend. And movies have to be able to hit so wide an audience that everybody can understand it, everybody can see it, everybody can love it. And the great thing about this adaptation is that you're right, it's for the entire family, but it's also specifically for somebody who loves Wicked, or also for somebody who specifically loves The Wizard of Oz. There are so many bits, pieces, bobs, knobs, things that you can look at: costume design, production design. I mean, you could write a thesis paper on the structure of the costumes for both Ethelba and Galinda. Thank God I'm not a goat. And basically you can come up with all kinds of these things just from how great the design of this movie is. It's like, it took a while to get there. It took forever. I remember people going, it's taken so long to get the Wicked adaptation. So long. And now that it's happened, it looks like they've made such strong decisions with who they chose to direct it, who they chose to write it, who they chose to star in it. It looks like a home run that is the kind of home run you get at movie theaters, and that becomes a classic, a movie that you watch over and over and over again and fall in love with it each and every single time you see it. I don't get like, there are some movies I just don't get excited about. I love The Wizard of Oz. I've loved The Wizard of Oz since I watched the first time it aired on Easter when I was a kid, and I've loved it ever since. I'm a Cowardly Lion guy. Love seeing the big guy on screen in baby form. And I just I just like thinking that Oz is a fertile playground where you can go back, and we always have these weird adaptations. And like, somebody asked me a question the other day, like, why do we have all these Oz adaptations? Like, because it's in the public record. It's in the public record. Technically, anybody can take a shot at it. But you're not going to get Wicked.
Now, granted, you can't use elements that MGM created for their 1939 musical adaptation. You can't, use ruby slippers, because that was a change they made, because silver slippers were in the book, and then when they were starting to make the movie, they said silver slippers, that's going to be kind of mirrory and reflective, so it's going to look like Dorothy has yellow shoes on, or they're going to blend right in, and then it looks like she just has stubby legs that end at her ankles and has no feet. So they changed it to ruby slippers because, they were shooting the 3-strip Technicolor, actually, and to make it all beautiful. The only thing I want to circle back here for a half sec, the only thing I'm a little bummed about it taking so long to get here with this film is that unfortunately, just due to time passing, the original stars of Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth are just too old for these parts anymore. And so unless you were lucky enough to see them play them on Broadway or see them perform songs like on the Tony Awards that year and stuff, you never really got to see that specific performance. Although Ariana Grande does some she's very much channeling what Chenoweth did on stage, from what I can remember.
And I don't know, like, I don't want to denigrate the performance, because it's off,
and I'm not saying that. I mean,
no.
But whoever set the template, Grande is running right with it.
Also, whoever has to play off of Ethelba, it really is based on how much the Ethelba is just knocking out of the park, and Ervio is so good. And with regards to people never getting to see the originals, I will say I think there is a wonderful passing of the torch moment that I can't even begin to, it's so warm. There's warmness to this movie that's amazing. You know what I mean? It's an incredible piece of. it's an incredible piece of business, and we should be so lucky to have people very carefully make movies the way John Chu has fashioned this movie.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the best movies of the year. I think it's going to get a boatload of Oscar nominations,
Mhm.
basically because the production design, Rich, it's mind-bogglingly good. Like I never would have envisioned, like, one of my favorite things that I know I was rewatching today. The idea that Oz looks both like Oz from the 39 movie and also like Kansas from the 39 movie is abundantly clear that there is a love for the original movie. And that's something, when filmmakers make a movie that I end up loving, it's usually because they love something I also love. And I don't know if you feel that same, like, do you get that sometimes when, like, there's a love for the original movie here that is, down to the credits, down to the titles, you know what I mean? Like, it's abundantly clear that there's a reverence for Judy Garland and the cast from the 1939 movie. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh, definitely. Yeah. Um, I mean, like I said before, they can't really use those elements, but they do hint around the edges of them. Um,
There
in fact,
are,
I'm like in the middle
yes.
of writing a piece on that.
Well, and also, yeah, there's so many great little cameo slash, like, just cute little tricks that they push in to make sure that that you love it. And once, if you watch it, and I think people are going to see it more than once, when you watch it more than once, you end up like falling in love with the movie over and over again. And the casting is so good, their chemistry is great. Um, Goldblum and Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh are fantastic. Everybody, Jonathan Bailey's really fantastic. It's a great movie. Go see it. Don't run. I mean, don't walk. Run. Um,
Run, push the
and
old
get
ladies out of
get
the
to
way.
the get to the Yellow Brick Road as quickly as you can. Um, okay, so second movie on today's on the Glicked, Blacked, Wikiator, whatever the fudge it is.
I,
Gladiator 2. Okay, so here's how I summed it up last night. One is quite possibly one of the best adaptations of a Broadway musical ever made. The other is a really good sequel that is a sequel. And at the end of the game, it's a sequel. And my dad had a saying that I'm going to throw out here. Sequels are never equal, except in the case. My dad had to add provisos as movies came out that were good, except in the case of Superman 2, Lethal Weapon 2, and Terminator 2. Those are the only three. And
not
Empire Strikes Back.
Empire or Godfather.
Well, Empire. I think Empire and God. Well, I think he always viewed Empire and Godfather. He never viewed Empire as a sequel. My dad never viewed Empire as a sequel. He always viewed it as a saga. Like, it was a trilogy. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
he never viewed it that way. Godfather. He lost his flavor for Godfather when 3 came out. Like, he looked at the other two movies as, like, not as good because of 3. If I'm being
Oof.
honest. So anyway, but sequels are never equal except in rare cases that we talked about. But this one, pretty good. You're gonna get what you want. Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, lots of Cals. You get Denzel Washington, kind of like right at the edge of Ham, right at the edge of scene stealing, scenery chewing, bombast. And you get people that are up and coming. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the fantastic things about this movie is that you have an 80-year-old director, and he's also by any stretch of the imagination bringing the next generation of stars. I think for me the thing that jumps out is how good Paul Mescal is at performing a you know kind of, not, I don't want to say like he comes across really well in this movie. It's a star-making performance for him, right? Joseph Quinn
Mm-hmm.
also, gets to play one of the emperors, one of the syphilitic, crazy emperors that are taking over, taking over the Roman Empire and Joaquin Phoenix's demise. everything about this movie is about a fallen empire. It's about giving up, trying to get power where the vacuum exists. And I think for me, it's a little choppy. Like for me, I was telling Hugh, I think for me, the movie is a good sequel, but people are going to ask me, is it as good as the original? And the answer to that is no. Like a flat no, not in a bad way, just the first one was really good. Like the first one's great, right? This one is more like, it's like the second time we're coming through. So everything has to get up. It very much feels to me, Rich, like a horror sequel. Like in a sense that it's, okay, so we had the tiger fight. That's great. What are we gonna have this time? We need something else. So we need like maybe a baboon fight or a shark fight, or like everything has to be upgraded to the point where it's like, the kills have to be bigger. And I think one of the things I read in your review, and I want you to speak on this, I think you're right. There's very few people in the supporting cast background that give any kind of credence that you care about any of these guys that are on Lucius's team. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's a weird. There are a couple guys that stand out. There are a couple guys that make it all the way through the movie, but they never get named, and they never get a private moment with him.
Yeah,
it's a weird dynamic.
In the original, we learn, of his comrades in arms when he was a Roman legion commander. He had some lieutenants, and they had some back and forth, and you could sense a camaraderie, a friendship there, and you kind of was like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. And you start to care about these secondary characters a little bit. Once he's in the arena, he has some similar relationships with those other gladiators, where he kind of helps them. They build each other up, and they're there for each other to kind of cover each other's asses in a few instances.
Yeah.
And so when something bad happens to any of these characters, and a lot of them are not sticking around until the end of the credits, you feel something. You have an emotional experience, which is what you want in a movie, what you want in good storytelling. And you're like, I like that guy. Oh, good, he survived. Awesome. You have those moments. And you don't get that here. We don't really know anything. Like you said, we don't even get names for some of these guys. Some of them are just, oh, there's the tall guy, and that's the guy with
there's an African American who's very photogenic that is constantly around him. It's a really nice kid, and he's super energetic when he delivers his lines. But they're all like, "Yes, we're gonna do it," And I think the other thing that's kind of, well, first off, I want to get out of the way. Ridley Scott is in his 80s, and he can still shoot action sequence better than most Hollywood working directors right now. So, Are the action sequences great? Yes, they're tremendous. They're incredible to watch. There's baboon fights. There's all these like wacky kind of like we're throwing it on its head.
But all that comes at the expense of, I think, character development and plot. Outside of not knowing anybody else in this movie, we don't get a whole lot of the political machinations. Derek Jacobi is back from the first film for a really thankless role of like one scene to establish that there's some political nonsense going on. He shows up almost as an extra in like a couple of the Senate scenes, and then
I was excited there's in the cast, and when I saw what his output was, I was like,
yeah, and then I'm glad he got a check, because I'm glad people are seeing him, and that'll drive them hopefully to check out his other stuff. But there's a whole character that was basically cut out of this movie. The actress, I'm pulling up her name here. Where did it go? I just had it in front of me. May Calamawai had been cast as who was supposed to be like a love interest for Lucius once he gets to the gladiatorial arena. And her entire character was cut from the movie, and she's only in about like 2 or 3 scenes as an extra almost in the background. I'm sure she got paid well, but it sucks because you're like, oh, that's cool, and you just know that there's tons of
and there's a very
tons of material on the. I mean, it's a Ridley Scott film, so of course we're gonna get a fucking director's cut that's gonna be like 3.5 hours long at some point.
Well, no,
and
but
it's probably gonna be the better movie.
Point. That's a
but it's frustrating in the moment.
it is frustrating in the moment. I would also say that midway through, there's a big shift to where you start thinking to yourself, this isn't Lucius's story, right? And I think it's going to come as a shock to most people who go see the movie, but it's not a shock because of who's playing the character that becomes the focal point, because he's the best actor on the planet. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not, this guy here, midway through the movie, it shifts. And that, I was thinking about the original Gladiator, and I think this is where I came up with it. I was talking to you last night, and I said I didn't understand how it ended up where it ended up. Right? It ends up in a specific place, and one of the great things about Gladiator, it begins and ends where it needs to end. It's supposed to like the fight that happens was supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so
It,
it was,
it's amazing as a Greek tragedy, because ultimately, if circumstances were different, those two would be absolutely on the same side because they have very similar goals.
yes,
But because of the actions of one, the other is now
because one feels that his father loves the other one more. It becomes, and that's a through line through the first movie, right? Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe are at odds from the beginning of the film until the last shot of the film, right? And it's a through line that is there. What happens here? The script gets a little sloppy, right? The Gladiator script was very tight and very, everything was like an, beginning, middle, end, perfect. What I said to you last night was I was having trouble with where it ended up and how it ended up, and also just the size of how it ended up. And what I came up with in my head was the through line. The through line is not there for Paul Mescal's character all the way through. He's a revenge orientated character until a certain point, and then the movie shifts and becomes somebody else's movie who's also out for revenge. And so it becomes this, it's a weird thing. Now, I'm not saying the movie doesn't work, because it does, right? Everything that you go to see Gladiator 2 for is on display. Looks brilliant. Special effects are great. It looks great. It's shot well. Ridley Scott is a master of his craft. That's all within the framework. But it's just missing a through line. Now, is it a star-making turn for Paul Mescal? Absolutely. Because he knocks it out of the park with what he's got. Because he delivers, strength and honor. He delivers all the little speeches he needs to deliver. He's great in the scenes with Connie Nielsen. He's great in the scenes with all the actors that are all these stars. He has a couple really great scenes with Denzel Washington, right? So, the kid can act. The kid he has chops. He can play. He has scenes with Pedro Pascal. Oh, by the way, Pascal, one of the unsung heroes of the movie. He's really great as like this general that's just had enough with warfare, right? I'm done. First sequence is great. First battle sequence is great, but I think there's a missing through line, and also there's a missing warmth, because like when Russell Crowe gets into the gladiatorial arena, Oliver Reed played the guy who owned him, right? And Oliver Reed and he died, while filming. Rest in peace. And but it was a warm kind of thing. And I know they're trying to go against it with Denzel, the way Denzel's playing the owner, right? This time around. But I just think it's one of those things where it's like there are little pieces missing of the humanity aspects of Gladiator, and also a little bit too much like they were sitting in a room writing the script going, well, we don't want to do the Elysium Fields thing again, so what can we do that's different? Let's do the River Styx, or you know what I mean? Let's do a river component. Like, it's like they have to work around things to not repeat things. But the things that worked, if you repeated them, nobody would have gave a shit. Is also like the thing, right? The idea that if you repeat the Elysium Field thing, or you repeat whatever, in fact, I would argue that the things that work the best in this movie are the things that repeat. Mescal in the gladiatorial arena when he grabs the audience buzzed last night when I saw it, Rich. when Mescal came in and the fucking Russell like comes in the armor,
Mm-hmm.
grabs a handful of rocks, starts rubbing it together. People were losing their shit, like getting the Pavlovian response. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? So, and also, but I understand you're trying to make an original movie. I get it. I get it, but you know, midway through it for me, it became like a weird. There was a through line. Lucius's through line gets cut off, and it becomes somebody else's movie, and you don't know that the movie's getting hijacked until the movie does get hijacked. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a weird.
I think until after it's been hijacked.
What was that?
Like, you know, until after it's been hijacked. Really, it's like,
Yeah.
oh wait, why are we spending this much time here instead of okay?
It's okay. Oh, it's over. Huh.
Yeah.
I will say the swag was. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna take off my headphones. AMC had first off limited edition posters last night. They're numbered. I'm gonna send you what I think, but they're numbered. So my friend said it looks like the cover for like a Percy Jackson book. Anyway, but this was the ultimate swag. People were fighting over these last night. Gladiator 2 thumbs, Rich. The swag is out of hand. I just want to say, but it's a good movie. I think if you go, it's going to be. I would say it's going to be the movie. If you take your dad on Thanksgiving weekend, your dad's going to love you for taking him because he's going to be reminded of all the movies he watched as a kid, like Ben-Hur and like fucking the Vikings. You know, all like The Robe and all those movies. It's good. It's really good. It's just not great. And I think what'd you say? What was your classic catchphrase for this one?
I was somewhat entertained.
I was somewhat entertained. Yeah, it was, and that's the thing. Like it's entertaining. And it's a completely different audience than Wicked, so it should. Now we do have some preliminary numbers. Do you want to do those numbers really quick before we end today?
Sure. Hit me with
everybody off to the movies. Okay, so preliminary numbers. First off, Wicked's going to have a much bigger weekend, and it shouldn't be any indication. You know, Gladiator's a little bit longer. It's R-rated. It's a heavy R-rated film. You know what I mean? Like, although there's no sensuousness in it. There's no. That's another thing that's a little weird. There's no love after the opening scene with his wife. There's very little like.
And that felt like a very chaste kiss. And I mean, I don't think this is a story that necessarily needs
smut. Yeah, you don't need smut, but you need something.
Well, like I said, who the heck knows what happened in that storyline that got cut? So,
well, and also like there was also rumors that there was many rumors this week about Denzel Washington apparently kissing a man in one of the takes that Ridley Scott has said that never happened, and then Denzel kind of said it definitely happened. And so I don't know. I would assume that.
But then he walked it back a little bit to say it was just like a peck kiss. It wasn't like 30
I would assume it's to any one of the people. It's to any one of the people he backstabs in a vicious and amazing way in the film. That's the other thing. Denzel is great. He's great in everything, but he's really good in this. He gets to chomp down on scenery. He gets to, like there are sequences of him in the Senate that are absolutely scintillating. Him touching a chair in a completely amazing way and also just yelling at old white people, which is fantastic. So anyway, always great. Preliminary numbers, box office. Wicked makes huge $19.2 million in previews. That should be tempered with the fact that there were fan screenings on Wednesday as well. So 19.2 is 2.5 million from Monday showings, 5.7 from Wednesday, and 11 million on Thursday. But 11 is extraordinarily high for one night. About from 3 o'clock on yesterday. Gladiator made 6.5 million. To put it in perspective, Barbenheimer Barbie made 22.3 and Oppenheimer made 10.5. So, good. Yes, let's go.
Yeah, this is going to get a lot of people to the theaters. I dare say Wicked is going to have people coming back for second and third showings.
Well, and also the recent announcement, we should talk briefly about this thing going around about Wicked. Don't sing along at the theater. I think it's stupid, but it's also like I don't think it's stupid. I understand the premise, but I don't.
I think people are more worried about it than they need to be.
Yes, and also I would also say, if you really need to sing, you can wait until December because they just announced that they're already making plans for a sing-along version that will open on December 25th.
Mm-hmm.
So they expect this movie to be in theaters well past December 25th. They expect the sing-along version to come. I would also say one of the things that I'm going to say to you is you can wait to see it. You can try to download it or whatever you're going to do illegally. But I think these two movies might be playing for the rest of November and into December.
Yeah.
So be prepared. Wicked is one of the better movies.
I mean,
the last
here's
2 or
how I
3
see
years.
Wicked playing out I mean, Gladiator 2 is going to get big first, maybe even a second weekend, but after that, I think it's going to drop off fairly quickly.
Wicked has Titanic vibes.
Go see it, talk about it to their friends. Their friends say, "Oh, Thanksgiving weekend, let's go see it. We've got time off." People who saw it the first weekend say, "Yeah, let me go. I loved it so much. Let me go see it again with you." And it's going to have a really strong second weekend.
Yeah.
I know before I had been saying that Moana 2 could have been a potential Wicked killer, but having seen Wicked now, I changed my mind on that.
No, I think
that theater kids who really enjoy this movie are gonna talk about it, keep talking about it in school, and it's gonna kind of carry over. And then once we hit winter break for everybody, everybody's gonna go see it again in the theater. I think Wicked has some really good long legs on this. I think it's gonna be doing well into January.
It has a Felba and Glinda legs on this. I think both are going to be popular. La la la. But I also think the thing about Wicked that everybody should realize, all the audiences I've seen it with thus far have been transfixed by it, but also it is a cross generational line. So people it's older folks, it's younger folks, it's folks in the middle, it's folks going with their parents, taking their parents to see it. It has potential to be one of the bigger hits we've seen in the last 2 years, just because of the wholesome nature of it, and also coupled with the sheer volume of talent that is inherent on screen and off. And the fact that they're promoting the hell out of it, they're doing their absolute damnedest to make sure everybody knows that Wicked's playing. So much so that I've talked to at least 3 people. I've been to 2 doctor's appointments the last couple of days. It's been rough. And I will tell you that at least 2 of the doctors that I mentioned the movies to said they didn't even know Gladiator was open.
Oh, damn.
They knew Wicked was because their granddaughter or daughter or somebody mentioned it, but they did not know Gladiator was even opening. So I'm not sure that Gladiator won't have any legs. There's no movie that is in the marketplace that is like Gladiator and can give you what you're looking for with, arms, heads being lopped off, as well as, crazed baboons and sharks. You really can't go wrong. Also, Mescal is one of those guys. He screams that he's a star, and he also is the kind of guy you want to have a beer with, but also your lady wants to have a beer with. So it's super easy to get both sexes going to this movie. You know what I mean? But that's it. Where you have reviews up, you have reviews of both of these movies up. You're gonna have what's your thing you're working on? You're working on little Easter eggs.
About Wicked. Yeah.
Easter eggs?
Wizard of Oz Easter eggs and Wicked. But all of that can be found at. Are we wrapping up here? Should I just go into my spiel?
Yeah,
okay.
It's a good time to wrap up.
Okay. All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com. as well as on our Facebook page for filmbuffonline.com, where you can also find links to not just our writing, but also notices about breaking news and history posts about what happened on this day in movie and TV history. For example, November 22nd, 1963, most people remember for the JFK assassination, but it was also the day Doctor Who premiered on the BBC. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Was Doctor Who on the grassy knoll?
Yes, I also participate in two other podcasts. The first is Film Scribes, which is a podcast put out by the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, which I am a member of. And I have just taken over production duties on the show.
Congrats.
The previous producer couldn't do it anymore. So I kind of like waved my hands and I'll dive into the deep end on this. And we just have our first episode out, which also covered Gladiator and Wicked, as well as some discussion about last month's Philadelphia Film Festival. So you can find that at the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle's website. Quick Google will find you there. And the other podcast that I always do with my good friend Natasha Bogutsky, that is called The Big Picture Podcast. You can find a link to that on Film Buff Online or at bigpicturepod.com. And we're dropping an episode where we talk all about Gladiator. It was a movie that Natasha Gladiator 2, excuse me. Natasha loves the first one, was very excited for the second one. So we talk about our reactions to seeing it last week.
Okay, so here's the popcorn bucket. Lots of swag at theaters this weekend. Popcorn bucket. Okay,
did you see the popcorn bucket for Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim?
The Warhammer.
The Warhammer thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. The popcorn buckets.
I need that in my life.
The popcorn buckets are pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's because they know people will just buy them out of like some sort of like love for their movie. So JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, all those places. You find some, I post Film Buff Rich for you. Also
on Twitter and Blue Sky, but I'm mostly migrating over to Blue Sky.
Everybody's migrating somewhere, right? Trying to get away. If you like the show, if you like us, if you like how our takes on movies, by all means, check out our Facebook page. Check out the Indie Escape Network on Instagram and YouTube. And hold on, where's it at? Coming up Monday. We missed it last week. It was my fault, not Rich's. We will be doing Sideways right before Thanksgiving. If you need to get some wine skills, also if you need to have like some sort of male meltdown in the middle of your life, because people are coming over for Thanksgiving and whatnot. Sideways, the Alexander Payne comedy that is the gift that keeps on giving at holidays. Thank you for joining us today for a special live episode for the Glicked episode of Generation Movie. We hope to see everybody on Monday. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Get to the movies. They
both are worth seeing on the big screen.
As big a screen as you can get, as loud a sound system as you can get. And have a good weekend. Good luck to both of them. May the odds forever be in their favor, each one. But they're both going to do fun. They're both going to do well with their target audiences. And I think Wicked has a chance to expand out to a 5-quadrant movie and eventually be like a universal mainstay. Like I'm thinking theme rides. I'm thinking part of the new epic universe at some point. But thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great week. Bye. We'll see everybody Monday.